Good evening, everyone. I'd like to thank Dean Slaughter and the Tuck administration for this invitation, and in particular, I'd love to thank all the DivCo co-chairs for asking me to speak this evening. As Dean Slaughter said, I was a prospective MBA student in the fall of 2007, and I attended DivCo as a part of my business school due diligence process. Education has always represented opportunity for me, and I was excited to be here then, and I'm excited to be here tonight. When you think about institutions like Tuck or any of the other schools that you're considering, you might think of incredible faculty, great career opportunities, and amazing alumni networks. These things are certainly true of Tuck, but one of the things I've learned is that institutions are more than rankings or incredible facilities. Institutions are made up of people, and your experience as a business school will largely be shaped by your classmates. Faculty are important. They're very important. But I think I learned the most from my classmates here at Tuck. That's why I love this year's theme of strength through stories. You know, I decided to go to business school to expand my skill set, but I got a lot more. I was a social science major at Columbia, and Tuck was at the top of my list because I wanted an MBA program that was strong in general management. I expected great classes and great people, great faculty, but I didn't really anticipate the caliber of people that I'd meet. And by caliber, I just don't mean people who went to great schools. I mean generally good people who were great leaders. In classrooms, on vacations, and over dinner, my Tuck classmates, like my friend here, Alicia Davis, taught me how to move from being an individual contributor to being a better leader. I didn't expect this aspect of business school, but then again, the biggest lessons I've learned in life have never been in the classroom. One spring, long ago, I sat at a table across from my friend Dino. Dino was an old truck driver who liked to rest his thumbs behind the straps of his overalls when he spoke to you. Dino moved slowly, and he had a stiffness in his walk as a result of some old injuries. He liked to say he was bionic because of all the surgeries he had been through, but his heart and mind were genuine and pure. You wouldn't know he had any physical limitations when you sat across from him. I had been meeting with Dino and a few other new friends at the same time and place over the past few weeks. Every night, we grab a cup of coffee, sit down, and talk. This evening's meeting didn't feel any different until I heard Dino say, "Congratulations on 2 moons." 2 moons. Dino was referring to my Native American heritage when he said 2 moons, but he was also congratulating me. 2 moons is 2 months, and I just told Dino I had 60 days of continuous sobriety. It took me almost 2 years of trying to get 60 days of sobriety, and Dino's 2 moon congratulations started to sink in. I looked at him and then past him to the coffee maker behind him. I could smell the coffee brewing, and I thought about the coffee I drank at all the meetings I sat in over the last 2 years. Dino was a lot like the people I ran into at these meetings, but he couldn't be more different than me. Different age, different color, different sexual orientation. But his attempt to speak to me in a way that was culturally relevant on a topic he knew more about than me caught my attention. 2 moons. No one ever thinks they'll end up in recovery. It hadn't crossed my mind when I was growing up in South Dakota. I'm an enrolled member of the Rosebud Sioux tribe, and if you were to visit my reservation, you'd see rolling prairie, straight horizons, and wide open sky. As a kid, I wanted to make a difference in my community. Native Americans aren't just another diverse community, we're also members of Native nations. Like states, tribes are governments, and I was told to go to law school so that I could understand and protect the legal foundation of my tribal government. And this became my goal. I got into Amherst College, and my plan was to apply to law school after I graduated. I dared to dream of becoming the first Native American Supreme Court clerk. I wanted to make an impact in my community through law, but my life went sideways right away. My drinking started in college, and it quickly became an important part of my life. It started slowly at first, but it quickly accelerated at the end of my freshman year. During my sophomore year, I stopped going to class. I only went out at night to avoid friends and people in my dorm. I also went to different liquor stores at night. I didn't want liquor store workers to know how much I drank. The food I ate also came from liquor stores, which, as some of you know, isn't much. I grew up in a rural, economically depressed part of the United States that most people fly over, so college always represented opportunity to me. But this college world started to become small, dark, and hopeless as a result of my drinking. I was barely a legal drinker, but early in my college career, I hated the man I became. Fast forward to that meeting with Dino. It took me 2 years, but I learned a lot of important lessons over coffee with Dino that helped get me sober. But what do these lessons have to do with you? What can I share about the lowest point in my life with individuals like you who are about to launch into successful and fulfilling careers of your own? Individuals who are about to switch careers or who are applying to business school to pursue dreams of working in consulting, banking, fintech, and other fields. My journey taught me lessons that got me sober, and these lessons have also guided my professional career. I listened to the admonitions of my elders, and I decided to pursue law when I was a kid. As I mentioned earlier, Native Americans are more than a diverse community. Tribal members are also members of Native nations. These nations are governments, and they have a status as sovereigns like states. Tribal sovereignty has its foundation in the Commerce Clause of the US Constitution, treaties, executive orders, and law. Like state and local governments, tribal governments provide important governmental services like healthcare, housing, and education. Tribes around the US have police forces, judicial systems, EMT, and other programs associated with government. State and local governments often try to assert their power over tribal land and tribal members. And when I was a kid, I listened to tribal leaders as they encouraged me to go into law so I could be an advocate for tribal communities and protect our tribe from overreach by the state of South Dakota. And I had a lot of attorney role models growing up. A family friend who actually didn't graduate from high school, but got his GED. He graduated Phi Beta Kappa from the University of South Dakota, and then he went on to Harvard Law School. And I always remember he wore a Harvard Law School ring, and something about that just made me wish I could earn my own ring, one day. After I got some sober time under my belt, I decided to go back to school. I took some courses at a local community college to get back into a student mindset. And then I transferred all of my credits from Amherst College in Massachusetts to Columbia University in New York City. I majored in political science. A summer internship in Merrill Lynch's Office of General Counsel turned into a part-time job during my junior and senior years at Columbia. I thought this would look good on my law school application. During my senior year, a banker at Merrill reached out to me. We had met through a legal task force that I was supporting, and he had just completed a bond financing for a tribal casino in Southern California. The tribal gaming market was in growth mode in 2004, and Merrill Lynch was doing more work in this field. He reached out to gauge my interest in helping start Merrill's Native American banking team. His outreach was intriguing, but I thought about my longstanding desire to become an attorney. I wanted to make an impact in my community through law, and this opportunity seemed like a diversion at best or the wrong decision at worst. I weighed my options. I loved taking the train down to the World Financial Center from the Upper West Side, and I loved the energy and buzz of Wall Street. I was responding to stakeholder requests about Merrill's environmental and social policies, and I was attending meetings with senior leaders of the firm. I was entrusted with responsibility, and it felt like my work was having an impact. I was also starting to tire of political science and law. I took a First Amendment course with the president of Columbia, who's a First Amendment scholar. And I remember asking myself, this feels really academic and disconnected from reality. I had a hard time understanding the impact I'd make in tribal communities through constitutional law. As I mentioned earlier, I tried to get sober for 2 years before I finally got some time, and the only thing that got me sober was when I stopped doing things my way and started taking suggestions from people like my friend Dino. I got sober when I finally opened my mind to new ideas. A willingness to be open to new experiences and suggestions changed my life. And the importance of being open to new ideas has always stuck in my mind ever since. So I weighed my options, reflected on this lesson from sobriety, and said yes to the Merrill managing director who reached out to me. In 2005, a year after I started working at Merrill full-time, we pitched a bond financing to the Seneca Nation of Indians, a tribe in upstate New York. I was the analyst on the team, and I was carrying the books for the two managing directors who were presenting our proposal to the tribe's elected leadership. I didn't have a role in the presentation, but during the Q&A, the tribal council treasurer looked directly at me and said, "Mr. Her Many Horses, what do you think about this deal?" I worked on the proposal and I was able to respond to his question, but he made a point to ask me, and not my boss or our colleague. His question created an awkward situation as I was the junior banker on the deal. But as I fumbled for an answer, it occurred to me that he was asking for my opinion as a tribal member who also happened to work in finance and not as a representative of Merrill Lynch. This experience became an inflection point in my life. We were selected to lead this financing, and we successfully closed the deal. The treasurer's question, however, taught me a couple of lessons. First, I learned that my colleagues' expertise could get us into the room, but my background as a tribal member would keep us there. More importantly, I started to understand I could have a meaningful impact on the economic lives of tribal communities. This tribal leader turned to me because he wanted to speak with someone he could trust. There aren't many Native Americans in finance. My last name is Her Many Horses, so he probably assumed I came from a community like his and understood the issues impacting it. There are other natives who work at banks in various capacities ranging from marketing to operations, but currently I am one of two Native American bankers. Over time, my goal of becoming the first Native American Supreme Court clerk changed to becoming the first Native American managing director by the time I applied to Tuck. I am not a managing director now, but I'm currently the highest ranking Native American at Wells Fargo. My boss reports to a member of Wells Fargo's operating committee. Put another way, my boss's boss reports to Wells Fargo's CEO. I held on tight to the idea of becoming an attorney for many years, and after I became open to new ideas, a lesson I learned in sobriety, my life began to open in ways I could not have anticipated. I realized I could have more impact on tribal communities through finance and not law, so my first suggestion to all of you is to be open to new ideas. After I graduated from Tuck in 2010, I joined Bank of America Merrill Lynch. Lafayette Ford, who's sitting right here, helped me secure a summer internship on his team in the middle of the credit crisis. And this opportunity led to a full-time offer. I moved to Charlotte for 2 years, and then the Las Vegas reached out when a spot opened on their team. They knew I had a background in casino finance, and they asked me to interview for an open position on the gaming team there. I became a gaming banker again. Bank of America acquired Merrill Lynch while I was at Tuck, so I wasn't rejoining my old gaming team. The Las Vegas team didn't know me or my capabilities, and I'd have to prove myself to them in short order. I moved to Las Vegas, inherited some clients, and I started calling on prospective casinos. The bankers on my new team were good people, but they had covered this industry for many years. They followed many of the casino general managers and CFOs from property to property. They had developed their winning ways and stuck with them. A lot of our business was focused on tribal casinos, and my former colleagues built relationships with casino executives through golf outings, golf tournaments, and golf. When I told them I didn't golf, they gave me some of their old clubs and shoes so I could start. But I'm not a golfer, and I didn't understand why they focused on casino executives for new business. These individuals are important, but for tribal gaming opportunities, casino executives aren't the decision makers. Elected tribal leaders decide which banks are selected for financing. Sometimes these tribal leaders simply bless a casino CFO's recommendations. Other times, it's tribal leaders making the call. So the focus of my new business strategy became elected tribal leaders. I went to the conferences they attended, and I listened to the issues they raised in these venues. As you can expect, these issues didn't involve slot play, sports betting, or other gaming-related topics. These conferences focused on education, healthcare, and land. As a member of a tribe with a casino, I understand that profits from casinos support important governmental priorities. So I kept my pulse on these priorities so I could better understand tribal needs when I pitched deals. One year, a tribal treasurer in Arizona invited me to her community. I always take invitations to visit seriously, but this invitation was different. She was inviting me to one of her tribe's sacred ceremonies. This ceremony would take place over a weekend. I quickly said yes, and I booked my flight, hotel, and car rental. As an outsider, I was honored to witness this event, and it was a beautiful experience. A week or so later, my manager saw my expense report. He asked why I traveled to Scottsdale over a weekend. He was used to approving golf outings to Scottsdale, but not weekend-long trips. I had to explain to him that spending time with tribal leaders was my version of golf. I was a gaming banker like my golfing colleagues at Bank of America, and I explained that I could be a more effective banker if I thought about prospecting tribal casino opportunities more broadly. I could differentiate myself as a banker by meeting tribes where they're at and focusing on individuals beyond casino general managers and CFOs. My manager came around to this new way of doing business, and he stopped asking questions about my expense reports after I started winning new deals. I won many deals at Bank of America with this method, and one tribal gaming financing that I did would become the largest gaming deal that my Bank of America team had ever done. And I did it all without stepping on a golf course. Tying it back to sobriety, I learned I needed to find the courage to be who I am and not what I thought other people wanted me to be. You can spend a lifetime trying to live up to other people's expectations. And I learned that if I wanted to be happy, content, and most importantly, sober, I needed to accept myself and be who I am. So my second suggestion to you is to be who you are and not who people expect you to be. I worked with a bunch of golfers who wanted me to golf too, but I knew I could be a more effective banker if I did it my way. I'm a Tweagle Fellow, and in the fall of 2017, a Tweagle Fellow who worked at Wells Fargo reached out to me. Wells Fargo was looking for someone to lead their Native American banking business, and he knew the hiring manager. 2016 and 2017, as some of you know, were very tough years for Wells Fargo. The fake account opening scandal had gotten a lot of press, and the bank's participation in the Dakota Access pipeline financing had drawn a lot of scrutiny. These scandals were impacting the bank's reputation, and they were hurting its Native American business. I was intrigued. I had closed a lot of deals in 2017 at Bank of America, and I was working on a pipeline of deals that would generate more fees for B of A in 2018. But I was bored. I was working on large deals for the most successful tribal casinos in the industry, but I also started to feel like I was helping tribes that didn't need my help. Most of my clients could afford to hire anyone they wanted. I had worked in the industry long enough to know the breadth of Wells Fargo's Native American business. Most banks that work with tribes only do it from a casino perspective. They support tribally owned casinos through their gaming teams, but these same banks typically don't do much business with the tribal governments that own them. Wells did both, and they worked with tribes whose financial profiles range from extremely successful to tribes with much more modest means, like mine. If you say you're committed to a community, to me it also means working with all types of clients, not just the wealthy ones. I proceeded with the interview process for the position. I received an offer in March of 2018. I gave my 2 weeks notice to the manager who asked me about my expense report, and he asked if I really wanted to go to Wells Fargo, given all the scrutiny it was going through. It was a fair question, but I had made up my mind. He countered my Wells Fargo offer, but for me, it was never about the money. It's always been about making an impact in my community. The past 3 years have been tough for Wells Fargo, but we're not the same bank we were when I joined in 2018. More importantly, the work I joined Wells Fargo to do has become more compelling. We made a 5-year, $50 million philanthropic commitment to the Native American community. We launched a marketing campaign targeting the Native American market, which may be the first ever by corporate America. And we're looking at ways that we can leverage our voice to elevate and amplify the issues that are impacting tribal communities. Last year, during the pandemic, the Federal Reserve Bank and the US Department of Treasury both contacted me. They were working on implementation of pandemic-related business programs, and they wanted to understand lending to tribal borrowers, so programs like the Main Street Lending Program would be accessible to tribal communities. I convened a group of bankers who covered tribal governments and tribally owned casinos within Wells Fargo, and I facilitated a discussion with these policymakers. Earlier this summer, I hired the Boston Consulting Group to work on a report that would identify things tribal communities can do to become more economically resilient. Tribal governments own businesses that are concentrated in the casino and hospitality industries, and these businesses are susceptible to downturns in the economy. When profits from these businesses disappear, so does funding for important tribal governmental programs. One recommendation we'll be making in this report is the creation of national economic and business reporting for tribal communities. There are no measurements of Native American wealth, GDP, or revenue. There is no analysis of industries that tribes participate in, nor is there discussion of areas of growth. Tribal communities are economically invisible. And if investors and corporations can't see opportunities in my community, they're not going to invest in it. This report will also compare pools of capital in mainstream America to pools of capital in Native America. My hope is that we'll be able to facilitate relationships and discussions between the worlds of PE and VC and tribal communities. Brick by brick, we're rebuilding our firm's relationship in the Native American market, but more importantly, over the last 3 years, I feel like I've been able to make an impact in my community through finance that I've always wanted to make through law. These times are tough, but they've also been really rewarding for me. And I wouldn't have experienced them if I didn't take a risk and leave Bank of America Merrill Lynch, my corporate home, for many years. But I've been committed to helping tribal communities, and Wells Fargo seemed like the next step for me. So my third and final suggestion to you is to take risks to honor your passion. My journey in sobriety has been about walking down the path that has been set before me. It's also been about having faith that things will work out as I honor my calling. It seems to be the fate of people my age to want to share our experience with people your age. I think the intention is good, right? I think we want to help you avoid the mistakes, right, that we've experienced. But within the context of business, opportunity, and education, the diversity that you'll bring into classrooms, conference rooms, and boardrooms will always be an asset. It is an asset, even if it's not recognized by the people around you. Avoid situations that dim your spirit and seek out opportunities that fire it up. Be open to new ideas, be who you are and not who people expect you to be, and be willing to take risks to honor your passion. Thanks.